we had the opportunity to legitimately sell out, to
Mm-hmm.
to be somebody we weren't, right? Not to sell the company for money, but to turn the company into something that it wasn't ever supposed to be. And, you know, I've heard you say lots of times, Elite FTS is a content company that sells, that happens to sell equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're similar. I mean, we help people improve their quality of life by experiencing strength. Strength is the mode, but it's not the value. And I think, again, there's a lot of people, I've seen strength training and training in general improve many people's lives, but I've also seen it not,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've also seen people that train, they're just complete and utter douchebags. And so training alone isn't the thing that does the thing. It's a mode. It's just a symptom of, do you have this aligned to your core values, right? And for me, it's the other reason why I think I probably came out of the time period I did from 08 to 10. You talked about the core values being established from a young age. All these core values were still deep inside me. The roots were there. And that's why I was so miserable, because I was living a life that wasn't in alignment with my core values. It wasn't just the business. It was that my life wasn't. And so, you know, I think if I, you know, whatever that was, women or conquest or drugs or alcohol or whatever the thing was, if I didn't have the values that I did, I think I might still be in that. But because those values are set, like you said, by the time you're 12, 13 years old, there was this constant pull, like deep in my gut, that kept trying to bring me back to who I really was supposed to be and who I really was deep down inside. But my actions showed opposite. And I can remember talking through this in counseling too. And that same counselor I was telling you about a minute ago, I was just like, I don't understand why I did this stuff when I don't really want to do that stuff. And she said, oh, you wanted to do the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like your actions showed you did. You can say whatever you want to. And maybe your values don't line up with that, but your actions did. Like you wanted to do the thing. And so when we have to make a hard choice, a voluntarily hard choice in the business, which happens at this point, at the size of our business, size of yours, weekly, if not daily, we choose what's in alignment with the core value. And when we do that, it doesn't just flow. You talked about from me to we. It doesn't just flow from you to your executive team, to all your employees and all your staff. If you do it well, and I think you've done it well, it flows out to the entire community of people who are consuming the content. Your content consumers, the people who have read the articles and the training logs and watched the podcasts all these years, I promise you they can get real close on what your core values are. Mm-hmm. Right. And they could do the same thing for me. We've been on thousands and thousands of hours of podcasts. We've done the same thing with writing articles. Like you can't fake it that long. And that's the other piece. And that's the reason why I've been so transparent, and you've done the same. You're the same when you were on my podcast. It's just like, I would rather not have the skeletons in the closet. I would rather just come out and be like, look at what a mess I was. Then later somebody else come around and be like, oh, this thing, like, no, I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you the stuff. And so, because I certainly haven't always made the right decision. But in the business, we collectively, daily, try to make decisions that are in alignment with our core values. And that's actually much easier now to have an executive team and a leadership team that's fully behind those core values, so that when I have my head up my hind end and start to get ready to make a decision that isn't in line with the core values, my team says, hey, that's not who we are. And I go, you're right. That's not who we are. Right. And then I thank them and we make the right decision.
Well, I think it's an important point, because these values are on a spectrum.
Yep, for sure.
Right. So you're gonna move too far one way or the other way, and that's fine. That's normal.
Yep.
But then it needs to be kind of brought back in there with the training side of all that, is because we've both seen people that the training will destroy them. You know, so the advice I have there is be careful of what you let become your identity.
That's right.
Right. Because if it's just singularly focused, your identity is being the strongest in the weight room you can absolutely be. And I fell into that. Then everything else, you know, falls from that.
And when it goes away, what do you do?
Well, you're screwed,
you won't
but you
always
don't
be
have
the strongest.
Yeah. You don't have any other identity that's
right.
associated with that. Right. Yeah. So, you know, that identity needs to, in a way, be balanced. It doesn't mean you're going to be a less effective competitor or lifter.
Sure.
Actually, I would argue you're going to be better.
Yep.
Because there's going to be less stress.
That's right.
You know, across your entire life.
Sure.
To be able to recover better from what you're doing. But people like to be all in on the things that they just want to be all in on.
Yep.
You know, and which is convenient.
Yep.
You know, because the better they get in business or whatever it is over a period of time, they realize they really weren't all in.
Right.
right?
That's
because, all in encompasses a lot of different avatars that you have to play throughout your life.
Yeah, you would say if my whole life was barbell logic, then I would never spend time with my kids. I wouldn't go do anything else. I wouldn't spend time with my wife. I wouldn't, go to my church. I would just do business. But thinking that was going to make me a better business owner, but it probably wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's the balance that actually brings the success often. And it's that consistent pursuit of voluntary hardship and the things that actually matter, that align with your core values, that make the biggest difference. And what we're trying to look for, coming back to that minimum effective dose, the way we even program in the gym, we're constantly looking at, we want to try to find the thing that's like the least thing that we can change, the smallest step we can change that moves the needle the most. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard figuring that out, obviously, but that's why if you're going to start spending money on advertising on Facebook or something, you don't spend $40,000 the first month, right? You spend $1,000 or $100, $40 or whatever. And let's say you spend $20 and you get $40 out of it. Well, okay, so it netted you $20, or did it double, or did it exponent? Did it square? Like, I don't know. Well, let's go to $60. Now, if you spend $60 and you make $80, then it made you only $20. Law of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
But if you made 120, okay, it doubled. But if you made whatever 6 times 360, whatever it is, now it's exponential, right? 3,600. Exponential. And so now that's how to use the minimum effective dose to keep trying to find where is that law of diminishing returns kick in. So I'm going to keep making this step in alignment with my core values, one little step at a time, changing one variable, which is my other thing with programming. The way guys program hop, they do a novice linear progression or something, and then it stops working because it does at some point. And especially when we were kids, then you just go to Muscle and Fitness or Flex Magazine, you pull a new program out that looked nothing like the previous program. Well, if the new program works, you don't know why it worked. And if the new program doesn't work, you don't know why it didn't work, because you changed every variable.
Mm-hmm.
You changed every lift, you changed the intensity, you changed the volume, you changed the frequency, you changed everything. So the way we adapted that to programming and minimum effective dose is we're going to linear progress. Almost every newbie is going to just do a basic linear progression till it stops working. And then we're just changing one variable. We're just going to change intensity or volume or frequency. And often intensity and volume have an inverse relationship, obviously, with each other. As the volume goes up, the intensity has to come down. But what I'm not going to do is change the intensity and the volume and the frequency and the exercise selection all at the same time. Because if that's not the scientific method. Scientific method is I control all of the variables except for one, and I change one variable and I look at the ROI. And if that one variable made a positive ROI, I continue to stick with that variable until I get the law of diminishing returns. And then I change another variable. But at no point do I just completely throw out the program and do a new program. Now, I say that occasionally somebody gets really tired of doing squats and deadlifts and they just want something fresh and new. But for the most part, it's that minimum effective dose for maximum return on investment step that can be applied to programming in the weight room, but it can be applied to business. They can be applied to life. It can be applied to in any of those things.
Well, it's all the same, because if in the training you have, your 4, like squat, bench, deadlift, overhead, press, and there's also others, like a barbell row. I mean, there's basic compound movements that, say there's 8 or 10, they, in my mind, they should be mastered before you really start branching off into the same movement pattern with different things.
That's right.
And otherwise you're never going to master that movement pattern.
That's exactly right.
And some of these are so fundamental. I mean, a barbell row is a cable row is, it's across the board.
That's right.
And where some of the younger lifters are making mistakes is they're jumping around movement to movement to movement to movement. They never learn.
They never master any of them.
How to feel any of them.
That's right.
And it kind of goes back to that whole mastery thing. You're not going to feel your lats on a row when you first start doing it.
Right.
You're just going to move it as effectively as you can move it, or your coach has you move it. But there's a time, where
the light bulb goes off.
Yeah. Now it's like, oh, okay.
Yep.
And that takes sessions and sessions and reps and reps. That's the point to where now you can branch it off
That's
into
exactly right.
something else. Or if you just can never feel it in that movement, then you do a different movement.
That's right.
It's kind of simple, but in business would be the same thing. You can't, start a business, then throw in 75 movements.
Yep.
You're never going to figure any of them out.
Minimum effective dose. Yeah. And I think about my journey there where it was like, okay, I started as an athlete, a sports athlete, probably never mastered that because I wasn't great at any of them, but I loved them. And then I became a lifter. And I want to be careful with the word mastery because there were always guys, but I relatively mastered lifting, became a pro strongman, an elite level powerlifter in 4 different weight classes. So it's moderate. And then I set my eyes on mastering coaching. I think it'd be real hard to be a master lifting coach having never lifted. I don't even think it's possible. Occasionally you see this in football. It's weird. You see the guy that's never played football. It's a good football coach. It's a weird, anyway. So then you master coaching. And then I'm like, well, maybe I should open a coaching business and I'm going to learn how to run that by myself. And then I'm going to learn how to hire employees. And then I'm going to learn how to be a CEO and not have to micromanage and write the systems. And so all of that is just a continuum. It's just a spectrum that you're on as you grow from one thing to the next. And you can literally take that down as small as you want to, down to, okay, I've mastered the squat and conventional deadlift, to now, okay, I can start to do sumo deadlifts, or I can start to do box squats, or I can start to do whatever. Or as big as playing sports and learning competitiveness and teamwork and all that kind of stuff. I can draw the line. I can see the ribbon that ties that all the way down to an 8-figure business and a CEO. That they're all interconnected. And without one, each domino is a domino that falls. You pull that domino, those first 3 dominoes fall. Number 5 doesn't because you just yanked number 4. This is all just a ribbon that binds together.
Well, I think that's one of the most interesting things that I've had with just doing this podcast is I can go through somebody's timeline and see how each thing builds on the next. Yeah. And I think that, for the listeners, that they need to do that with people that they look up to. Sure. But I don't think you should look up to anybody, but for lack of a better statement of that, and look at the timeline, and go through that and see how that built upon, because nobody just falls into a certain thing at a high level on accident. Yep. It doesn't work that way.
Nope. It always takes time. Even the ones that seem like they exploded overnight, there is no overnight success. Even the one that might have gone from and again, I hate that we rank it this way with social media world, from, 100 followers to 1 million followers in a relatively short period of time. A guy like an Alex Hormozy or something that just exploded over the last couple of years. That guy's been working for 20 years doing this.
Yeah, I was going to say, look at the whole story.
There is no overnight success.
Yeah.
The guy's been doing it for 20 years. It just, at some point you hit critical mass and it grows. But like that, you don't get critical mass you don't go from 0 to 1 million. You go from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 2. And then people don't even take notice until it gets to 100,000 or something, so it's like, well, there was 18 years behind 0 to 100,000. And yeah, occasionally you hit viral something and you go from 100,000 to 1 million very quickly. But man, there was a lot of work that had to be done in the 18 years or 20 years or 30 years before that. And so, and this is where come back to the idea of being the 85-year-old man I want to be. The joy is not in the accomplishment of the goal. It's in the pursuit. It's in the pursuit of the goal, right? It's not when you hit 85 or if you set the world record power. I would love to have this on. You probably asked this question before. I would love to talk to some of these like a Hoff or somebody and just be like, is the accomplishment of the goal, did the joy really last from the accomplishment of the goal, or was it really the pursuit of the goal? Because my guess is if you can give the vast majority of those truth serum, they would say it was actually in the pursuit. They'll look back later at enjoy. This is the difference between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I'm a huge fan of both those. I don't even watch sports. I haven't watched sports in years, but I used to love it. Daughters, right? So they don't care. But Michael Jordan worked harder than anyone who had ever worked in NBA ever. But he also got a greater return on his investment because he was extremely gifted. The guy went from, everybody knows the story, not making his high school basketball team as a sophomore. By the time he was a senior in high school, he's probably the best high school player in the country. That's a big ROI, right? But he also outworked everybody. But here's the thing about Jordan.
Well, there is a piece to that story that kind of gets left out. He was held back because he didn't hit a growth spurt. But anyhow, it doesn't change the narrative.
The thing about Jordan is that Jordan, I really believe, wanted to win more than anyone who's ever lived in sports. He wanted to win. His work was actually for the accomplishment, right? And so everybody's, even if you're not a sports fan, and you can picture it right now, when he finally won that championship the first time, he's sitting on the locker room floor, he's crying, and he's holding that championship trophy, and his dad's next to him, and he's sobbing. They've finally got the Pistons off their backs, and they beat the Lakers, and they got the thing. I would love to ask him, how long did that joy last? Before you start thinking about next year's championship and working. Now, here's the difference between Jordan and Kobe. Kobe got joy from the work, completely divorced of the outcome. Did Kobe want to win? Yes, of course he did. Kobe outworked everybody who's ever been in the NBA, even more than Michael Jordan. Now, I will argue all day long that Jordan is the GOAT. He's the best basketball player of all time. But Jordan was much more gifted than Kobe was. But Kobe outworked everyone. Kobe found joy in the pursuit, in the process, divorced of the outcome, so that when he won the championship or when he didn't, he could still celebrate or not, but then he just got right back to work, right? My guess is that Jordan went out for 4 days straight, gambling and drinking. Yeah. After Kobe was in the gym the next morning, shooting free throws. That's the difference, right? And so it's understanding that when you see the ribbon, when you talk about my story or anybody else you have on this podcast, you see the ribbon that binds it all together from early childhood all the way to who they are now. The joy is in that story. It's not in the accomplishment, right? So I'd love to build a big, giant $100 million business and sell it one day and retire. And do I think if I do that, then all of a sudden all the joy that I want in life will be there because I accomplished the goal? No. I think I'll look back at that time and I'll think back with nostalgia and go like, remember those years that were just really, really good when we were growing and we'd come together as a company and we were still broke and sometimes we had a hard time making payroll. That's actually where it's at, man. That's life, because life is messy and it's hard and it's great and it's beautiful. It's got all this stuff. Like that's where the joy is. It's not, and it's not we don't pursue PR. Like to get joy out of the pursuit, there still has to be a goal to chase. Like you still have to have the goal. Like we don't just do life with no goal. But recognizing that accomplishing the goal is not the thing that actually brings the long-term joy. That's a fleeting happiness that is great and celebrate. You should enjoy the trophy, but then look back and go, man, it was all the work I put in to get there. That's where the good stuff is.
So how do you go from a side hustle to a full business? And the reason I put that out there now is I was listening to something the other day, just the nature of the economy and more jobs are being created, but there's a little bit of a false narrative around that because a lot of those jobs are second jobs, you know, because people can't pay their bills. So they got to get another job. So they have a side hustle to be able to kind of make ends meet with that. And, you know, some of those want to build that side hustle into a full thing, which is basically what you did.
Yeah. So, and I hope what we're trying to help other coaches do with our, so Barbell Logic is the name of the company, but our software is called Turnkey Coach. And it literally is what it sounds. It's a turnkey. It's not just a programming platform. It's a complete like turnkey coach. And this is not to be a commercial for that, but the concept is there. It was built by coaches for coaches to be able to help them do this very thing. You're whatever. You're a plumber. You're an accountant. By the way, and I think those jobs are fantastic. As a matter of fact, if I had a son, I would be like, go be a plumber, HVAC, like whatever, electrician. Great job. Don't go to college and get $100,000 in debt. So, not talking down about it. But let's say you work any normal job and you don't like it. Not a fan. What you really love is this like coaching thing, or name whatever other thing. Let's say it's coaching. Well, you got to go back to the 18 to 24 months. You got 18 to 24 months. Where you get to work 2 shifts. Shift 1 is the one that pays the bills, and shift 2 is the side gig. And you got to work your ass off at it. You got to outwork everybody. Again, work doesn't cost money. It costs energy and time. That's what it does. And so you've got to work efficiently and effectively. You work on the things that actually matter and not drown in the urgency of working in the side hustle, but work also on, you got to do both, and you got to work in and on.
Well, non-distracted work.
That's right. Really important, dude.
Yes.
So again, we were, I think, I don't think we're recording. I love what's called the Pomodoro. My whole team will measure output and how much work we got done by Pomodoros. Like how many Pomodoros did it take you? So Pomodoro is the original thing. It's from like the 80s. Remember the old kitchen timer when we were a kid? It was a tomato, right? And so everybody's got a timer on their phone now. But those old tomato kitchen timers that your grandma had, it looked like a tomato. Pomodoro is just the Italian word for tomato. And a guy did a study and he found that most people can do excellent undistracted work for 25 minutes. Now, some people can do it for 30, 45 an hour, some 15, little kids, 7, whatever. But you set it in general for like 25 minutes and you turn all the notifications off on your phone and all the notifications on your computer. And you have one task that you focus on. And I usually have a scrap of paper beside me. So if something pops into my head, like, oh, I got to thaw meat for dinner tonight, I just write thaw meat and I go right back to the thing. I don't actually get distracted from the thing. So my phone doesn't go off, my emails aren't, I've got everything. My phone's on airplane mode, my computer's on airplane mode, whatever. And there's no distraction. And you just do this undistracted work for the thing that has to be done. I have mentored a ton of up and coming coaches in business that just need to sit down and write their first system, which I usually get them to like clean the gym, how to clean the gym. I'm like, you shouldn't be cleaning the gym. You're coaching a lot, hire somebody to clean the gym, but you got to have a system for that. You can't just hire somebody and go clean the gym. That doesn't work. So we got to have a system. Next month we do our call. Send me the system that you did on clean it. Well, I just got so busy. I just didn't write. See, now we got a problem, right? And so the key is you've got about 18 to 24 months. You can work your ass off and you can do double shifts. And then this is the financial key. You don't spend $1 of the second job. Because if you're making 60 grand at the main job and then you make 10 grand at the second job and then 20 and then 30 and then 40, eventually you're making 120 grand and you raised your lifestyle. And now to leave the old job, you've got to take a pay cut. Your pay's got to get cut in half again. So what you do is you take all the money from the second gig until it can replace the first gig. And then you leave the first gig. That's how you do it. And that takes an enormous amount of work, both in the business, developing the skill, developing the mastery, and the work on the business of the systems, of the processes that you have to have in place, of standard operating procedures, all that stuff. Both of those have to be done. And you're on a time limit. 18 to 24 months. If you're grinding, like Andy Baker and like I used to do, like where you're working 4 a.m. to 9 p.m., you got a couple years you can do that. And after that, you're just like, screw this. I'm burnt out. I'm not doing it anymore. It's not going. I
think the biggest takeaway from that is the undistracted work, because when I was building the business, I didn't have those distractions, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you do the work.
Yeah.
There's no Facebook. I mean, there's none of these other things to be able to do that. So it's just focus on this work, stop, now do this work, go back to this work, and just plow through it. Where today, in an attention economy, there's distractions all over the place.
Built to do it.
Yeah, and we're giving them part of the distraction.
Yep.
So we're kind of contributing to the issue. But aside from that, that is the economy that we're in.
Yep.
So that in itself has to be a skill set that they need to be able to work on as well.
For sure.
But it has to be allocated time. So if you're trying to figure out how to grant or get more attention, watch people that have attention.
Sure.
But watch it with the eye.
Right. Then I'm learning.
What are they doing?
That's right.
Like how did they segue into this topic? How did this, like, what was that beyond just absorbing it, studying it? It's a different eye, to be able to look into. And if they can do that, then the 12 to 24 months for sure. If they can't do that and they let the distractions, then it's not going to work.
Right. That's right. And I tell
probably ever.
I tell people this all the time. Like, I actually think it is unbenevolent of me to, when I see someone who just doesn't have it in them to run a business, I have to tell them. I say it all the time. I say, hey man, this is probably not for you. You need to work for somebody else. You don't have I've got people that I know, which, be careful the way I tell the story. They're just very unreliable. They don't show up on time. They don't get the work done. They can't focus and output. I mean, again, there was a interview with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates years ago, and they were asking these two the richest guys in the world, like, what is the thing that really separates people success from unsuccessful? And both of them said the ability to focus and get shit done.
Yeah, I would put in there, and I'm not at their level, the ability to tolerate chaos.
Oh, for sure.
you know, and because that's probably the biggest thing is, you know, people will start businesses, but they don't have the ability to deal with chaos.
Yeah, and not just tolerate, but I would even say manage. I mean, there
Well,
has to
love
be
it. I mean, there's got to be a part of you that kind of loves
Yep,
it, even though it's horrible.
Yep.
You got to love that. And
Yep.
if you don't have that, then, you know, work for somebody else and
Yep.
you can build a great life doing that. There's way more people doing that.
For sure. And way safer.
Oh
and,
my
yep,
God. Yes.
yep,
Yes.
yep,
And
yep.
and can be far more successful and can just, when they leave work.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things I think that young entrepreneurs don't really grasp.
Sure.
You know, such as you never leave work,
That's right.
ever.
It's the work is never done.
You know, 25 years, ever.
Yeah, right.
You
And
know,
it's never done at the end of the day. I talk about this all the time. My family, my employees, and my leadership team knows every day you make a decision as a business owner when to stop working. And then you still think about the work, but like
Yeah.
where I actually closed the laptop and I stopped working, not because the work was done, right? I'm not mowing lawns. Like at some point you mow the last lawn for the day, the lawn is mowed, the work is done. I get to go home, and I bet that person never thinks about mowing lawns. I envy that a little bit, right?
I envy that a lot.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm not going to lie.
I get up I woke up at 3:30 this morning, no alarm, woke up at 3:30, which is 2:30 my time because I'm Central Time. And woke up and was like laying in bed. I was like, come on, you can go back to sleep. And I could just, nope, you can't, right? Get up, open up the computer, make the coffee, pop in the Zen. Here we go. Time to work. And so and guess where I started working? Where I left off last night. Because that's what being a business owner is. It's never done.
Is your whole network of staff online?
Or my entire network of staff's online.
So how does that work?
Yeah, it's we were lucky because we've been doing that since 2016, since way before COVID, when everyone else had to figure it out. So we've been doing the Zoom and again, it comes back to, I talked really briefly about that system, that kind of game plan system of goals, actions, metrics, execution. For me, I don't pay anybody hourly. You can't do that online. Like, I don't know how many hours you work. Like, and I'm certainly not going to sit there and have some sort of like parental thing on your computer so I can see how much you're actually on your computer doing work. We don't pay for time. We pay for output. We're an output-based company. Like, I don't care if you're a full-time employee, if you get your work done in 20 hours a week or 60 hours a week, it's the output you're getting paid for. It's the only way to do it online. And you just have to have really good systems and standard operating procedures in place. So people, obviously this is a theme of what I've talked about. Imagine why, because I never see my employees face to face. Matter of fact, I have my executive assistant is an hour outside of Columbus. We went and had dinner last night. I see him about twice a year. My executive assistant, who I talk to, text, email, DM on Basecamp numerous times every single day, but I never get to look him in the eye and say anything, you know, unless it's on Zoom, which doesn't count, right? So you just have to have great systems in place. We get up every day and everybody knows what they're supposed to do for the week. And at the end of the week, we do a quick weekly report. They're weekly reports. It's not TPS reports. It's not like, you know, it's not Office Space. It's like, if 5 minutes, if you can't tell me what got accomplished this week, then the report was too long. And then I take a culmination of those on Sunday morning. I get up on Sunday morning, sit down and take all of those, the 5 major areas of the company, and I put those in a single succinct report. And it's an all hands report, and I put it in draft form and I hold it because I'm not going to send it on a Sunday. As a matter of fact, I used to do that. And now my Nikki Sims, my CXO, would get me in trouble. And so I get up Monday morning, boom, hit send. Now everyone knows what we accomplished last week and what we're going to accomplish this week, and how that fits into the bigger model of what we're trying to accomplish this month, and how that fits in the bigger model of what we're trying to accomplish this year. And then we meet as a mission control team. So my top 4 executives meet twice a year in person for about a week. Either come to Springfield or would go somewhere and travel and get a big Airbnb and work for a solid week. We set strategy, what we call strategy deployment, every 6 months for the year. So we did that in January for the whole year of 2024. In June, we'll do it again, and we'll look at how much do we need to course correct. I still got 6 months of 2024, and now we're going to talk about the plan for 2025, the first 2 quarters of 2025. And then that drives the yearly game plan, the goals, actions, metrics, which drives the monthly game plans, which are divided up by different teams, right? Different types of teams, like the content marketing and sales team, or the operations and dev team, or the CX team, or whatever that is, a finance team. And so that's how we get it done. And when you focus on output, which still comes back to undistracted work, then you output a lot. And I think one of the things that we do well when our ability to scale is because we are an extremely high output company. I would be very surprised if there's anyone who's quiet quitting at my, if you heard that, right? There's like, just, they've taken on 4 online jobs and they're doing the bare minimum at all of them. And if they get fired from one, they still have 3 jobs. They're making 75 grand at all of them. It's pretty good financial commitment, but like, again, back to core values, that's real shitty. And so we're an output-based company.
Were there any topics that you wanted to cover I didn't bring up?
No, I don't think so. I check really fast on I'll give a CTA at the end of where to send people if you ask me that.
Oh yeah, I will definitely ask you that. The pursuit of hard things.
I mean, I think we got most of the big stuff.
How do you define success?
Did I put that in there as a question?
Yes, you did.
Jesus. Okay, ask me again.
How do you define success?
Dave asked me a question that evidently someone on my staff sent you. That now I'm not ready for. I think living a life, a value-driven life that's in line with your core values. That's it. Certainly not money. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to be able to pay the bills, not worry about keeping the lights on. That part's great. But ultimately, if you're not really intentional and thoughtful about who you want to be and what your core values are, and the actions that you're doing aren't driving that, I don't think you're successful, right? And so I think there are lots of billionaires. As a matter of fact, I saw a thing on Twitter the other day of, can someone find me a billionaire who's over 35 or maybe over 40, and there were like 3 things, like who's still on their first marriage, whose kids love them, or are well adjusted, and there was one other thing. No one could come up with one. They've all been divorced. They've all got kids that hate them, or or whatever. They somehow. So, getting to that height of a billionaire, certainly, my guess is that most of those guys would say, I would rather have some of that stuff back and would happily pay for it. You go to Warren Buffett, the guy's whatever he is, 94 years old. If you could ask Warren Buffett, how much of your wealth would you give up to go back to being 28? Answer is all of it. Because time is the finite piece, right? And so I want to live a life that is value driven for the vast majority of life, so that when I'm 85, not that I've arrived, but at 85, I look back and I go, I lived a life well lived, like that was in line with my core values. Whether the business succeeds, whether the business fails and we go bankrupt, like whatever those things, I don't think those things have anything to do with success. I think living a life in line with your values, like being a value driven person, and for me as an owner of value driven businesses, that's success. And so not everybody's going to look at business the same way I do. Certainly a lot of people aren't going to want a business this big. But I think when you can live a life that's in line with your core values, I think that's, and pass that on, I hope, to your kids and your spouse and the people that you're closest to. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to do.
One of the things I put a lot of thought into, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, was legacy, where there was a time in my life where I was like really concerned about that. And then the more I thought about it and the more years that have gone by, the more that I don't care about it at all, because 5 years after I'm gone, nobody's going to know. Right. And 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, nobody's going to know it all. I mean, people forget real fast. And even if you make a big imprint, on the earth, what are the odds that
pretty low
you're going to be that, so it's, I kind of started to reframe that in my own head, that's chasing this false narrative that's not even true.
Sure. That
really doesn't matter. But what matters is if there is a legacy, it would be in whatever I can give my children.
That's right.
Because they'll pass that. Those values, they'll pass on. And so where with what you were speaking about with those guys is that legitimately is where those values can be passed for generations.
If you do it well.
Wealth doesn't get passed well, Rockefeller, I suppose.
Right. There's a few.
Most people, I mean, generational wealth really doesn't work for very long.
Three generations.
Yeah. So three generations. So even that, you know, is kind of a false pursuit.
Right.
And if you can, you know, be on your deathbed and look back and have memories that are worth remembering, then that's worth it. You know, and that's where, because a decade ago, whatever, legacy was like a big thing that everybody was talking about. It was like a CTA, you know, that people were kind of pushing all over the place, which kind of led to all that. And, you know, I've had people in my life that have passed that have been very well known, and it's, you know, years go by, they're not so well known anymore.
That's right.
You know, now things that they've done, you know, and maybe things that they've contributed, you know, Louis, for instance, 10 years from now, people will still kind of know Louis, but what they're going to know are the principles that he popularized.
That's right. And the guys that moved, and comes back to what you said about the kids. My job, and this is another great way to say success, is it's my job to move the ball down the field. Right. So I come from I don't even know how long, but a long line of Ozarkians, people from the Ozarks, which is obviously notoriously a poor, hillbilly, uneducated sort of area. It's a great show. Great show. We don't have a lot of, there's not a big drug cartel, but it's very entertaining. But, you know, my parents, I had very good grandparents, and they moved the ball down the field, but they were very poor and uneducated. My dad was very educated, but again, I'm son of a poor Baptist preacher's kid, but they really raised us well, and they moved the ball down the field. And then my dad was actually an engineer later in life, and they did better with finances and stuff. So both financially, but also with core values, moved the ball down the field. I think my generation, my brother, my sister, and I, we've continued to move the ball down the field. My goal is to prepare my children to move the ball down the field. I don't want them going backwards 20 yards, but not just them. I'm playing the long game, man. I'm not even thinking even just about my children. It's my future grandchildren, who I don't have yet, and great grandchildren. Not so they remember, you know, great grandpa Matt was this, but because the values that I set in place in the family got carried out. And it'll be the same thing with Louis. 30 years from now, like, Louis popular enough that people will be able to read about him in the annals of strength history. But the reality is,